I want to quickly get on to your appearance recently on Lotus Eaters, friends of mine, friends of yours, and what happened there?
So I've watched the show since the beginning, and I've come to know quite a lot of the guys in the office. And it's one of those things where it's really informed my intellectual understanding of the right, coming from a completely left-wing point of view as I did. I disagree with some of their formulations, but agree with others. But that's because actually they're not putting across necessarily any particular point of view. All the guys have their own perspective that often differ quite a lot.
Yeah, they definitely welcome differing opinions, which I respect about them.
Yeah, exactly. And so because I respected that, and because they've been so significant in my intellectual formation, let's say, that it's a show that I've always wanted to go on. And so I could have asked at any time, can I go on your show?
No, you want to be asked that.
Yeah, exactly. It's a bit crass, but also for my own sort of achievement, I wanted to be deemed worthy of the platform and the respect and the company that I was keeping. And so I waited until I was asked, and I think 3.5 years after the show started, I got asked, and I was like, oh my God. So I went to Swindon. I had a terrific time. I got to meet loads of the guys who I'd only talked to online, sometimes for a couple of years. Finally got to sort of meet them in person. Had a really good, it was the most relaxed I'd ever felt during a podcast. I think we talked about some rough topics. We talked about Peter Lynch and Italy's immigration problem. But it was like a real high moment for me. Then I came off air and saw some stills from it, and let's just say my top could have been better. It was accentuating in a way I didn't realise before going on air. It was buttoned up. I thought it was dignified. Turns out the level of the camera just wasn't. And I thought, okay, my mistake, catalogue that next time, don't wear that top. But then as I was on the train home, I thought, I'll just, because I never normally look through comments, like we all learn that very early on, just don't do it, because it will just destroy your soul and you won't do anything. People are far more likely to criticise than praise you, so just don't look. But I thought, no, I feel like I know this audience, I've been a part of this audience. I'll just gauge whether they liked me, because the guys liked me. I was like, okay, they'll ask me back, but I don't want to keep going back if the audience don't like me, So I thought I'll see who the audience is, what their reaction is. And to my horror, almost like every fifth comment was about my breasts and the size of my breasts, and they were just, I can take sort of laddish comments, but some of them were really graphic and really disgusting. And what really got me was the fact that topics we were discussing at the time, and it didn't stop over like the 1.5-hour period that we were on air. It's like, fine, everyone made the comment in the beginning and then moved on. Like, that didn't happen. It was just throughout. And almost every comment that was about me was specifically about how I was dressed. And so from start to finish, we're talking about the rape and murder of Italian girls. We're talking about the suicide of Peter Lynch, who is, a political prisoner in some significant sense, who killed himself in prison after carrying a placard at a protest against Axel Rudakubana and mass immigrations. It was a serious topic, and so it in some way shattered my perception of the right wing as I had built up. It's not tarring the whole right wing, but there is a subsection who can be quite misogynistic, or frankly are misogynistic, who the right are afraid to address because they are a part of their audience who are earning them money. And it's something I didn't think really existed it was just, hearsay and rumours, because every man I've ever met on the right wing has been an utter gentleman. I've been treated more like a woman and far better as a woman since transitioning from the left to the right. So it's a bit of a shattering moment, and that hurt just because I'd had such a good time, and to know that all of this was happening whilst I was on air was rough. I thought, but I've worked really hard to develop myself intellectually. I've studied for years. I've been to Cambridge University, and when push comes to shove, all people can talk about is my physical appearance. And I thought, after a point, because it wasn't just 1 or 2 or even 5 or 10, it was getting into the hundreds, and the producer told me he had to delete some pretty graphic ones. So I thought, I'll say something, that I didn't like the fact that people were making these comments whilst we were talking about something so serious. I got a big backlash from that, including from the guys at the studio, and that in itself was a shock, because I've watched and listened to hundreds of hours of them, and they always talk about gallantry and, no, you've got to treat women right. You can't just say, get back in the kitchen, while some women want to be in the kitchen these days and feel deprived. Not all women can. And if you want women advocating for straight white men in the right-wing circles, you kind of have to treat them with respect and not just like a piece of meat. So I thought, maybe if I'll say this, one of them will say, calm down, guys, all right, you've had your fun, but remember, we're talking about something serious here, and we're not going to get other women on if you talk about them in this manner. But that didn't happen. And I don't know, I was sort of grief-stricken for about 2 days, because it really was like a culmination point for me. I felt like it was a career milestone in some sense. I'd been on all the podcasts that I wanted to, or at least, I've yet to go on Jordan Peterson, but I've had an invite for about 3 years or 4 years, which I haven't picked up. But so I've been told I'm completely blacklisted. I'll never be on again.
Because you complained that the comments were a little bit too sexist, misogynist.
Yeah.
Who blacklisted you? Carl. Gosh.
I get it in a capacity, and I think, I know the boys certainly felt betrayed, and I understand that, because these circles are very tight-knit, and everyone has a high trust culture because we talk about such difficult things. But I think they perhaps underestimated how much I felt betrayed as well.
It's a hard one, isn't it? I guess because they're most of them still are friends of yours and mine, but I don't know how hard it is to just say, guys, this isn't right, and
it's not the whole audience, right? And I said, it's not the whole audience, but
nor is Carl responsible for them.
No.
But I think you can still come out and say something in the middle, as hey, I'm not responsible for this. However, come on, guys, this isn't right.
We talk about treating women a certain way, and you're letting it's that old cliche, you're letting yourselves down. But I think my horror was mainly the fact that my vain self went, but I've worked so hard and I'm so intellectual, why can't they? That was just my ego. But I think the real horror bit for me was the fact that we were talking about the rape and murder of children and the suicide of a political prisoner, but those guys couldn't. And the thing is, it was alienating for the other women in the chat as well. I saw them sort of going, oh God, you're disgusting, like, stop.
Yeah. And these are not things that Carl and Connor and those guys stand for at all.
No.
Not at all. So I feel that could have. I don't know the ins and outs. I'm sure they would have a different view of it. Maybe I'll ask them at some point.
Yeah, I do.
But we talked about it before we started just now, because I had a similar experience on Tim Pool's podcast where Tim was very nice and polite and lovely, and a couple of the other guys I found a bit, I don't know, but they were all fine. And it's that feeling of, you didn't realise it, but when you were on and when I was on, I'm sitting there smiling along, nodding along, like laughing with everyone, thinking I'm part of this. I'm such a good, this is great, and all of that. And then went back to my hotel room in Virginia, somewhere around there, and then rewatched it, the same thing, and every other comment in the chat, it must have been thousands, just going, Jew, who is a Jew, why have they got a Jew on the show, why have they got all of this stuff, and you feel humiliated, because it was like you look at yourself smiling along like an idiot, while actually that's what tens of thousands of people are thinking and saying. So maybe it's something that had Carl and Connor sort of experienced a similar, maybe they have done, I don't want to speak for them, and I only mentioned those two of the Lotuses because those are the ones I know. I don't know the other people necessarily. I find that sad, and I'll have to, next time I speak to them, and wonder what was up there, because it's not hard to do. We're not responsible for comments. I do get people commenting, guests saying, "Hello, someone's put this in the comments. Do you mind going and deleting it?" And I say I'd never delete them, because people then
and it's
conspiracy.
It's too much to get through,
it's
and
too
blah
much,
blah.
But I'm sorry it happened. Just a personal message. I'm so sorry that they are saying these things to you. And
well, I wrote to Carl and apologised and said, look, maybe I went too far in how much I kicked up a fuss. I understand that maybe it was interpreted as a criticism against the whole audience. It certainly wasn't. You know, I love and respect you guys. I've told you this. But he never replied to me. So.
But Carl has a softer side, and
I know.
He does go back on, there are things that he did, and then he's gone back a few years later and said, "Oh, I shouldn't." So I just say that because I think there's probably hope for your friendship. I think I'm sure that there's room to navigate in there. I don't think that's forever blacklisted.
No, I mean, I certainly still have a great amount of affection for them. It was just a culture shock in many different ways.